The rain had started unexpectedly, one of those quiet Los Angeles drizzles that barely touch the ground before evaporating, but enough to smear the neon lights into blurry, colorful streaks. Vin Diesel tightened the hood of his sweatshirt and walked faster, his footsteps echoing off empty brick walls. It was past midnight. Filming had gone longer than he'd planned, and his driver had been stuck across town in traffic. Vin wasn't the type to wait around doing nothing, so he chose to walk the few blocks to his hotel. He'd taken shortcuts through this neighborhood before. It wasn't dangerous, exactly just forgotten. The kind of streets that looked abandoned even when people lived there. Faded murals, broken streetlights, rusted metal doors leading to shops that had closed years ago, and tonight, for some reason, it felt even emptier than usual. Vin moved with the casual confidence of someone who'd spent half his life filming action scenes in darker places than this. But still, something tugged at him, a quiet unease. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was instinct, something that had saved him more times than he could count. He checked over his shoulder. No one. He kept walking. But then came the sound. Soft at first. Too soft for most people to even notice. A low rumble. An engine idling. Not the gentle hum of a parked car. No, this was different. It had weight, like someone pressing their foot on the gas, just enough to keep the engine awake. Then slowed. The alley stretched ahead of him, long and dim, framed by two flickering streetlights. At the far end, beyond the shadows, he saw the silhouette of a vehicle. A black SUV, windows tinted too dark for the hour. It didn't move, didn't inch forward, didn't flash its lights, it just waited. Vin's heartbeat kicked up, not fear, but awareness. Years of performing stunts had taught him how to read danger, even when it wasn't speaking out loud. And right now, every instinct screamed the same thing. Something is wrong. He considered turning around, but before he could, the rumbling grew louder. The SUV jerked forward an inch, then another. And then, like a predator breaking stillness, it accelerated fast, too fast. Vin stepped back, his body reacting before his mind could catch up. He reached for the wall behind him, sensing he only had seconds, but then someone grabbed his arm. A strong grip, calloused fingers, pulling hard. Move. A voice rasped, before Vin could even see who it was. The man yanked him sideways, shoving him behind an overflowing dumpster. The metal groaned as Vin's shoulder hit it, and then, whoosh. The SUV shot past the spot Vin had been standing a heartbeat earlier. Tires screeched. The vehicle skidded, fishtailed, and nearly slammed into a chain-link fence before speeding off into the night. No hesitation. No attempt to stop gone. Vin stayed crouched, breathing hard, trying to understand what had just happened. The rain suddenly felt colder on his skin. The stranger beside him panted quietly, hands on his knees, catching his breath. Vin turned to get a look at him. The man was thin, wrapped in layers of mismatched clothing, his hair long and unkempt. His beard was grayed and ragged. He looked exhausted, worn down by years of streets and struggle. But his eyes, those dark, sharp eyes, were alert, focused, as if danger was something he watched for every day. The man swallowed hard, then said, "You don't walk through alleys alone at night." "Not around here," Vin blinked, still processing the moment. "You just saved my life," he said quietly. "Who are you?" The man hesitated, then said simply, "Just someone who pays attention." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rain had thinned into a mist, drifting through the beams of the streetlights like smoke. Vin stared at the stranger, really stared, now trying to understand the man who had just dragged him out of death's path. Up close, the stranger looked even rougher than Vin first thought. His jacket was torn at the shoulder, its seams held together by makeshift stitches. His boots were mismatched, one cracked leather, one canvas held together by duct tape. His face carried the tiredness of someone who hadn't slept on a real bed in years, but his posture was strong, steady, a man used to surviving. Vin gently pulled his hood back and stood up straight. He wasn't trying to intimidate the man and only to honor him with the same presence he gave anyone who deserved respect. "Thank you," Ben said, voice low but sincere. "You didn't even hesitate." The man shrugged, as if saving a stranger, saving a celebrity, no less was something he did every day. "Saw the SUV earlier," he muttered. "Had a feeling it wasn't here to park. You saw it?" Vin asked, surprised. The man nodded. They circled the block twice. Headlights off. Windows down just a little. The kind of way people drive when they're looking for something or someone. His words carried the weight of experience. The kind of instincts you develop only after watching the streets like they're a chessboard. Vin took a breath. "What's your name?" The man hesitated, as if weighing whether names even mattered anymore. Then he said softly, "Ray." The name fit him somehow. Simple, unpolished. Real Vin extended a hand. I know who you are," Ray interrupted with a tired half-smirk. "Everyone knows who you are." Vin let out a breathy laugh. "Fair enough." Ray didn't take his hand at first. Instead, he studied Vin's face, as if trying to figure out why a man with millions of fans and a career built on action, Steens was wandering alone down an alley at night. But finally Ray reached out and shook his hand. His grip was firm, stronger than Vin expected. "You hurt?" Ray asked. "Just my pride," Vin said, "and maybe my shoulder." Ray glanced at the dented dumpster. "Metal's tougher than you think." "So are you," Vin replied. Ray said nothing, but Vin saw a flicker in his eyes, something like embarrassment. Or maybe humility. Vin looked around the alley. A cardboard mat lay tucked against the wall where Ray had been lying. A frayed blanket. A small backpack. A half-crushed water bottle. That was all he owned. That was his home. "You stay out here?" Vin asked gently. Ray didn't flinch. "These days, yeah. How long?" Ray lifted one shoulder. "Long enough?" There was no self-pity in his voice. No bitterness. Just a tired acceptance, as if life had stripped him down to the bare minimum, and he'd learned to live with it. Vin felt something twist inside him, anger, sadness, guilt, admiration. He wasn't sure. Ray looked away. "Didn't mean to scare you. I just saw the car coming, and you were in the wrong place. You call saving my life scaring me?" Vin said with a small smile. Ray didn't return it. "I've seen things in alleys like this. People don't usually get a second chance." The words hit harder than Vin expected. He wanted to ask more how Ray ended up on the streets, what happened to him, why he was alone. But he could tell Ray wasn't ready. So instead, Vin said quietly, "You didn't owe me anything, but you still stepped in." Most people wouldn't. Ray looked at him, again, really looked. "Most people don't pay attention," he said. Vin held his gaze. "Well, I'm paying attention now." Ray blinked, almost startled by the sincerity in Vin's voice. For the first time, something in Ray's face softened. The next morning, Vin woke earlier than usual, long before his alarm. He wasn't tired, but his mind felt heavy, replaying the moment the SUV lunged toward him. Replay after replay. The sound of the engine, the blur of headlights. Ray's grip, pulling him to safety. He rubbed his face, sat up in bed, and stared out the hotel window. Los Angeles looked peaceful from the 27th floor sunlight crawling across rooftops. The distant hum of traffic slowly waking the city. Peaceful, but deceiving. Something wasn't right. He wasn't the paranoid type. But last night wasn't a misunderstanding, or a coincidence, or a near accident. It was a targeted hit. He knew it in his bones. He showered quickly, dressed, and headed downstairs to meet his security chief. Eric, a former Marine with the calmness of a man who'd seen too much and learned not to panic. Eric was already waiting, laptop open, expression tight. "You okay?" Eric asked without greeting. "Physically. Yeah," Vin said. "Mentally. I've had better nights." Eric turned the screen toward him. "I pulled traffic camera footage from 2 blocks around where you walked." On the screen, grainy black and white clips played cars passing, shadows stretching across sidewalks, empty intersections. Then the SUV appeared, a black Escalade. No plates, dark windows, driving slowly, almost stalking the street. It passed Vin's alley 3 times before stopping at the end of it, waiting in the dark. Eric paused the video. This is seconds before the car lunged. Seeing it from the outside made Vin's stomach tighten. "That's not an accident," he said. "No," Eric agreed. "And whoever's driving knows what they're doing." They knew camera blind spots. Most of the alley's angles are out of range. Ben leaned closer. "You get anything else? Stickers, scratches, anything?" Eric shook his head. "Clean to clean." Vin crossed his arms and exhaled slowly. He wasn't used to being hunted. Chased on screen, sure, but not in real alleys, not by real people. What were they after? Vin asked. "We're looking into it," Eric said. "Could be a stalker. Could be extortion. Could be something connected to your production schedule. Could be someone wanted me dead," Vin finished. Eric nodded grimly. Vin stepped back from the screen, hands on his hips. His mind raced through possibilities, business deals, partnerships, disagreements, recent controversies. Nothing fit. "How many people know my walking routes?" Vin asked. "Only security and your driver," Eric replied. "And even then, they know your usual routes, not your habits." Vin felt the weight of that. He had taken that alley dozens of times without telling anyone. Only someone watching him carefully would have known. Someone besides Ray. And that thought pulled Vin right back to the man who saved him. Ray, the homeless man with sharp eyes. And instincts that came from a life of surviving the edges of society. A man who noticed details people with full stomachs and warm homes never bothered to see. The kind of man who could sense danger before danger sensed him. Vin grabbed his jacket. "Where are you going?" Eric asked. "To find the guy who saved my life." "You think he knows something?" "I think he saw more than I did." Eric frowned. "You don't even know where he is." Vin paused at the door. "I know where he sleeps." The alley looked different in daylight. Less threatening. More broken? Ray's spot was still there, the cardboard mat, the blanket, the backpack, but Ray wasn't. Vin checked the corners. Under the fire escape? Behind the dumpster? Nothing. He walked 2 blocks, then 4, scanning doorways, bus stops, benches. Ray had vanished as if the night had swallowed him back. But Vin didn't give up. He asked shop owners, street cleaners, other homeless folks in the area. Most shook their heads. A few pointed vaguely, but one older woman, sitting beside a shopping cart full of blankets, said, "Ray, he moves a lot. Mostly under the overpass. Safer there." Vin thanked her and headed toward the overpass as he walked. One thought repeated in his mind like a drumbeat. Why did a homeless stranger notice danger before anyone else? And why did someone want Vin dead in the first place? Whatever the answer was, Ray was the only person who might know. The walk to the overpass took nearly 20 minutes. Vin barely noticed the distance. His mind was too busy replaying every second of the night before. Every detail Ray had mentioned, how the SUV circled, the way it slowed, the way Ray reacted faster than any trained bodyguard ever had. Most people look at a homeless man and see someone invisible. But Ray saw everything as Vin approached the overpass. Sound of traffic thundered overhead like distant waves crashing against metal cliffs. Shadows pooled beneath the concrete, stretching long and uneven across the ground. Beneath those shadows were scattered signs of lives lived on the margins, sleeping bags, cardboard beds, a few old grocery carts. Vin scanned the area. Searching for one face, Ray's a couple of men nodded at him. Surprised to see someone as recognizable as Vin Diesel walking toward them with quiet determination. He nodded back respectfully. But his attention stayed focused. Then he spotted him. Ray sat alone near a support pillar, hunched over a small beat-up radio. The device crackled with static between bursts of faint music. Ray was turning the dial slowly, as if searching for something familiar in the chaos of frequencies. Vin's footsteps approached softly, but Ray noticed him anyway. He looked up, startled not out of fear, but disbelief. "You actually came," Ray said. Vin lowered himself onto the concrete beside him. "Told you I owed you a thank you." Ray shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. I just acted. That's the part I don't get," Vin replied. People don't usually jump in front of moving cars for strangers. Ray chuckled softly, the sound rough and dry. Guess I'm not people. Vin studied him for a moment. Ray's face, though tired, held a quiet strength. His hands were steady, his eyes alert. A man broken by circumstance, not by character. I saw the footage this morning, Vin said. That SUV wasn't an accident. It was waiting for me. Ray didn't react with surprise. Instead, he nodded slowly like he'd expected this. Yeah, Ray whispered. You figured? Vin echoed. Why didn't you tell me last night? Ray shrugged. You were shaken. Figured you needed to breathe first. Vin leaned forward. Ray, you saw something else, didn't you? Something I didn't. Ray hesitated, then spoke carefully. Before the SUV sped up, I saw a hand. Driver's hand, pale, wearing a ring. Big one, looked expensive. They kept tapping the wheel like they were nervous or excited. Vin's pulse quickened. That was more detail than any camera captured. You noticed all that in the dark? He asked. When you live out here, Ray said quietly, you learn to recognize danger by the way it breathes. For a moment, neither spoke. Vin looked at Ray, really looked. The man had saved him, tracked details most people ignored, and now sat under a bridge with nothing but a backpack and a radio to his name. Vin exhaled deeply. Listen, Ray, I don't care how long you've been out here. You don't deserve this life. Ray stiffened immediately. Don't start with pity. This isn't pity, Vin said firmly. It's gratitude. And respect. Ray turned away, uncomfortable. Vin continued gently. Let me help you, just a place to sleep tonight, a hot meal, clean clothes. Not charity, just a human being helping another human being. Ray's jaw tightened. People offer help all the time, but they don't stay. They don't keep their word. I'm not people, Vin said, echoing Ray's earlier words. Ray looked at him, searching, suspicious, hopeful, afraid of being hopeful. You really mean that? He whispered. Yes, Vin said simply. Come with me. Ray's eyes glistened as he looked at the ground. It took him several seconds before he spoke. All right. Vin smiled softly. Good. One step at a time. For the first time since they'd met, Ray let out a breath of relief, as if someone had finally seen him. Not the layers of dirt or the years of struggle, but the man underneath. And as they walked away from the overpass together, Vin couldn't shake one thought. Saving his life was only the beginning. Now it was his turn to save Ray's. Ray followed Vin out from under the overpass with slow, uncertain steps, like a man crossing an invisible border he'd lived behind for too many years. Cars rushed by overhead, the sound echoing like distant thunder, growing softer with every step they took away from the concrete shadows. Vin didn't say much at first. He didn't need to. His presence alone carried a promised steady calm, unmistakably genuine. Ray kept glancing at him, half expecting Vin to suddenly change his mind, or walk too fast, or forget he was there. But Vin stayed close, slowing his pace when Ray lagged, giving him space when he needed it. They stopped first at a small cafe, a block from the hotel. Ray froze outside the glass doors, staring at the warm lights, the clean tables. The smell of fresh bread drifting out each time the door opened. You okay? Vin asked gently. Ray swallowed hard. Haven't. Been inside a place like this in a long time. You will be today, Vin replied. Inside, customers stared, but not out of judgment. Mostly shock at seeing Vin Diesel casually walk in with a worn-out man at his side. Vin ignored it. He guided Ray to a corner booth. Ray sat stiffly, hands folded on the table, as though afraid he'd break something. When the waitress came, he didn't look her in the eye. Vin ordered food for both of them. When the plates arrived, toast, pancakes, sausage, Ray hesitated, staring at the warm meal as if it might vanish. You can eat, Vin said softly. Ray picked up the fork with a shaking hand. The first bite hit him so hard, he closed his eyes. Food tasted different when you didn't know where the next meal was coming from. Vin pretended not to notice the tears Ray quickly wiped away. After breakfast, Vin walked him to the hotel. Another difficult step. Ray hovered outside the lobby like a ghost at the doorway of a world he didn't belong in. "You're with me?" Vin reassured him. Ray nodded, took a breath, and stepped inside. They got him a room. Clean clothes. A hot shower. A warm bed. Things most people would call small, but to Ray, they were miracles. When Ray came out of the bathroom an hour later, steam drifting around him, hair damp, beard trimmed, wearing fresh clothes, the transformation wasn't dramatic, but it was profound. He looked less like a shadow and more like a man. Vin smiled. "There you are." Ray looked down at himself. "Feels strange?" "Being treated like a human shouldn't feel strange," Vin said. Ray met his eyes, and something in him cracked wide open. "Why are you doing this?" He whispered. "You're you, and I'm nobody." Vin shook his head. "You're not nobody. You saved my life. And even if you didn't, you still deserve help." Ray sat down on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed. "No one's ever said that to me." Vin sat beside him. Maybe they should have. For a long time, the room stayed quiet. The kind of quiet where two people understand each other without speaking. Weeks passed. Ray didn't go back to the streets. Vin checked on him often, not as a celebrity doing charity, but as a friend. Ray met with counselors, ate regularly, slept more in 1 month than he had in years. Slowly, his shoulders straightened. His voice grew steadier, his eyes brighter. One afternoon, as they walked through a park, Ray said, "You didn't just change my world, Vin. You gave me a reason to want a world again." Vin paused, touched. "You did the hard part, Ray. I just opened the door." Ray smiled, a real smile, one that made him look years younger. "Still," Ray said, "I'm living because you cared." Vin patted his shoulder. "And I'm living because you paid attention." They walked together down the sunlit path to strangers bonded by fate, danger, and the simple truth that sometimes the person the world ignores is the one who saves you. And sometimes saving someone else saves you right back.